Well, agree or not with the outcome, that was still a pretty good match that last one. But right back to the tournament now. Jim Dandy Deacon and Mid-South champion Billy White Moon facing Chris Wlde and Jeff Fortune.
The following tournament tag match is scheduled for one fall with a 20-minute time limit. Approaching the ring at a combined weight of 490 pounds from Norman, Oklahoma, RWL Mid-South champion Billy White Moon, and from Abilene, Texas, Jim Dandy Deacons, best of the West.
Alright, so these two guys definitely earned their spots. They came in during the survival mode and they took out Team Splendid. And so now they're getting ready to face Wlde Fortune. And of course, Chris Wlde and Jeff Fortune successfully eliminating the Canadian cartel during the survival mode. And this is how we wound up all the way here.
Tough call picking a winner here. Chris and Jeff, of course, born survivors, former tag champions, but best of the West can battle just about anybody. So this is totally a gosh. I don't know for sure moment.
Their opponents at a combined weight of 460 pounds from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Chris Wlde, and from Loch Lomond, Virginia, Jeff Fortune, Wlde Fortune.
Over 10 years with the company, 2 championship runs to their credit. Chris Wlde and Jeff Fortune, Wlde Fortune, have been long-standing winners, but they are going to be up against it against Best of the West tonight. I gotta go with Christie on this one. Too tough to call. Both these teams are absolutely fantastic, and it stinks that one of them is going home tonight, getting eliminated. And once this match is over and we have a winner, we will have our semifinalists for the semifinal round. All right, it'll be Billy White Moon and Jeff Fortune starting things off in this tournament matchup, the last one of the first round. Referee Walt Rothburn sounds the bell. They come center ring. They lock it up. White Moon whips Fortune to his team's corner, drives a knee into the midsection of Jeff Fortune. White Moon putting the boots to Jeff. A rebound off the ropes and a face wash. Jeff Fortune rolls out towards center. White Moon gathers him back up again, puts him right back in the corner. Here comes Jim Dandy on the tag. Here comes a double team. A hard shot to the midsection to Jeff Fortune as Jim Dandy Deacons takes over. A DDT from Jeff Fortune and an immediate cover. 1, 2. A near fall this early on. Well, now Jim Dandy whipped over the top rope out onto the floor by Jeff Fortune. He may have hit his head. Fortune hangs Billy White Moon up off the top rope and down he goes. Jeff Fortune working the crowd, but here comes Jim Dandy. An elbow right to the top of the skull. Jim Dandy Deacons with a slap across the face. All right. Fortune counters with a hip toss and goes for another pin. 1. Only a 1 this time. Jim Dandy Deacons certainly ready for him on that one. Jeff Fortune. Headlock punch to Jim Dandy. He goes behind on him, rear waist lock. Sets him up, tries for the leg sweep, but no good. A clothesline from Jim Dandy Deacons. Deacons rounds up Fortune. Whips him to the Best of the West corner. A boot to the midsection. And another, and a third. Jim Dandy Deacons in control of things at the present time. There's a stomp to the back of the head of Jeff Fortune. Fortune rounded back up again by Deacons. Deacons takes him to the far right corner, instead smashes his head into the turnbuckle. Tries for a scoop slam, but no good. An inverted DDT from Jeff Fortune. Fortune with a measured right to the head of Jim Dandy, followed up with a hard kick to the back. Jeff Fortune opts to take himself out of the equation and turn it over to Chris Wlde. Jim Dandy on the outside. Billy White Moon taken out with a shoulder tackle by Chris. Jim Dandy going after Jeff again on the outside. The referee already counting. Slam head first into the lip of the apron goes Jeff, as Jim Dandy definitely steps over the ring steps. The referee continuing to count him. Chris Wlde has had quite enough. He steps outside. A hard right, a jab, and a hip toss from Chris. Chris Wlde gathering up Jim Dandy. A hard right to the head. Jeff Fortune just about coming about here. A couple of rights from Chris backs Jim Dandy up towards the barricades. A right, another one spins him around. Fortune is just about coming out now, and there's a headlock punch from Chris Wlde to Jim Dandy Deacons. Deacons being escorted back towards the ring, rolled back inside by Chris. Jim Dandy trying to make the tag here, and he does. Here comes Billy White Moon, the Mid-South champion. A swing and a miss from Chris. A set of rights from White Moon and a headlock takedown from the Choctaw Chopper, wrenching away at the head of Jeff Fortune. Oh, nasty double axe handle right to the chest, followed up with a stomp to the back of the head. A rebound off the ropes from White Moon, misses the kick. Chris Wlde stepping out of the way just in time. White Moon whipped to the ropes. Oh, what a beautiful arm drag. A running kick to the face to White Moon. Chris covers, hooks the leg. 1, 2. Only a 2. Billy White Moon catches a shot to the back of the head, trying to get himself stood back up again. Counters with a shot to the midsection to Chris Wlde. A chop across the throat, but another hip toss from Chris Wlde. Chris raining hard right hands on the head of Billy White Moon, and turns it over to Jeff Fortune. The ref seeing the tag. White Moon laid out near his corner. Quickly back up on his feet, locks it up with Jeff, puts him back into the corner, and here comes Jim Dandy one more time. Deacons and White Moon whip Fortune to the ropes. Back body drop as Jim Dandy takes over for Best of the West. Double boot scrape across the sides of the face of Jeff Fortune, and he does it again. Jim Dandy Deacons lays in a fist drop on Jeff Fortune. Fortune gathered up again. Locked up, escorted towards the ropes. Deacons leaves him parked right there and turns it over to Billy White Moon. Chris Wlde still hanging off that rope. Whoa, well now, Chris Wlde might have been playing possum. Pulled the rope down and out went Billy White Moon. Chris Wlde going after Jim Dandy again, tags him with a right. White Moon back inside the ring, locks it up with Jeff Fortune. Whips him to the corner. White Moon quickly countered by Jeff. Jeff locks him up. White Moon escorted to the opposing corner. Head first into the turnbuckle goes White Moon. Jeff Fortune smashes his head into the turnbuckle a second time. Jeff Fortune with a series of machine gun chops across the chest of Billy White Moon. Down he goes. Jeff Fortune turns it over to Chris Wlde again. Both teams working very efficiently. Slam double axe handle to the head of White Moon. Chris Wlde locks it up with White Moon again. Spinning neckbreaker. Jeff Fortune watching as his partner works here. Gets the leg swept by Billy White Moon. White Moon off the ropes. A flying punch takes Chris Wlde down to the mat. A kick to the face from Billy White Moon. Chris whipped to the ropes. White Moon ducks under. Tries for the belly-to-belly suplex, but catches an elbow to the head and a flying crossbody from Chris Wlde. Chris flips White Moon over. Drops an elbow on the leg. The Mid-South champion on the defensive at the present time. Counters with a shot to the head of Chris. Chris goes behind another rear waist lock. Sets him up and nails him with a knee breaker. Chris tags in Jeff Fortune. White Moon making his way to the corner. Best of the West, here we go. Jim Dandy Deacons comes in on the tag. Taken down with another crossbody by Jeff Fortune. Fortune rounds him up hard, right hand to the head of Jim Dandy. A kick to the back. Jeff Fortune firmly in control at the present time. The momentum has shifted back and forth quite a bit already. Fortune whips Deacons to his team's corner. Deacons counters with an elbow and a headbutt. Takes Jeff Fortune down to the mat. White Moon comes in again. White Moon catches a back body drop from Jeff. Another cover, another hook of the leg. 1. Only a 1 this time. Jeff Fortune with a right to the head of White Moon. Locks him up. Takes him up. And, sidewalk slam. And Billy White Moon certainly felt that one. Followed up with a hard kick to the back. Jeff Fortune gathers White Moon up again, the Mid-South champion. Whip to the Wlde Fortune's corner. Counters with an elbow, finds his way out. Jeff Fortune with a hip toss to White Moon. Chris Wlde comes in again. White Moon laid out center ring as Chris moves in. Gathers White Moon back up. White Moon whip to the ropes. A shoulder tackle from Chris. Chris Wlde starting to feel it now. Rounds White Moon back up for another shot. Gets a hold of the trunks, has him up. Vertical suplex from Chris Wlde. Wlde gathers up White Moon again. Sets him up for another. Slammed him face first into the canvas. Chris Wlde steps out, steps back in for a reset. White Moon still stunned. Jawbreaker takes him down. So far, the action in this one's been frenetic. A hard right takes White Moon down again. Chris Wlde makes his way to the top turnbuckle. Here he goes, drops the leg across the throat of White Moon, goes for the cover and hooks the leg. 1, 2. Jim Dandy right there to break it up. Chris Wlde catches a jawbreaker from Billy White Moon. White Moon locks up Chris, whips him into the best of the West corner. Here comes Jim Dandy Deacons again. And another tandem shot to the ribs. Jim Dandy scoop slams. Chris Wlde drops the elbow across the chest. Goes for the cover and hooks the leg here, but Jeff Fortune right there to break it up before even the count of 1. Jim Dandy Deacons rounds Chris Wlde up, puts him in the best of the West corner. Chris Wlde counters, putting Jim Dandy into his own corner, up on the middle ropes. And Chris Wlde starting to rain right hands on the head of Jim Dandy. Jim Dandy quickly countering and getting himself out of that situation. Chris right back into that corner again. He's had enough of it. Jim Dandy, here, use your own corner. Hung up off the ropes, down goes White Moon. Jim Dandy finds his way out of the corner, but Chris Wlde right there. Vertical suplex from Chris. And a series of stomps to the chest. And out to the floor rolls Jim Dandy Deacons over the top. Holy old hell. Well now, flying crossbody over the top rope. High-risk maneuver paying dividends for Chris Wlde here, as both members of Best of the West are at a huge disadvantage. Chris with a stomp to the face of Jim Dandy Deacons. And again, a series of short staccato stomps to the chest from Chris Wlde. He is really laying in to Jim Dandy on the outside. Referee still continuing the count. He's going to go after White Moon as well. Billy White Moon hurled towards the barricades. Jim Dandy Deacons rolls Chris back inside the ring. Steps in himself. Kick to the midsection. A right from Chris. And another spinning neckbreaker to Jim Dandy. Chris turns it over to Jeff Fortune. Fortune making his way towards Deacons. Misses with the right. Jim Dandy back up on his feet, locks up Jeff, puts him back in the Best of the West corner. With the leg over the rope, a kick to the calf from Jim Dandy. Jeff counters Dandy. Gets a hold on him, whips him towards the ropes. Ducks under, and delivers an elbow to the face of Jim Dandy Deacons as Chris Wlde takes over for Wlde Fortune. Deacons, avoiding the drop kick of Chris Wlde, delivers a headbutt. And Jim Dandy Deacons is indeed busted open as Billy White Moon comes in on the tag. Another running crossbody from Chris Wlde takes White Moon down to the mat. White Moon rounded up by Chris again. Up over the shoulder into a scoop slam as Jeff Fortune comes in and takes over. White Moon laid out near his own corner. Here comes Jeff Fortune. White Moon back up on his feet, a running shoulder. Taking Jeff Fortune down. Here's a cover center ring. 1, 2. Jeff Fortune getting the right shoulder up. White Moon misses with the clothesline, winds up catching a headlock punch from Jeff Fortune. Jeff Fortune goes behind on White Moon. White Moon with an amazing counter. Fortune whipped back into the Best of the West corner. And what a match it has been so far. White Moon driving knees into the midsection of Jeff Fortune. And now putting the boots to him. Putting all of his weight into the chest of Jeff Fortune. Handstand off the ropes and both knees into the chest. Billy White Moon, the Mid-South champion, covers, hooks the leg. 1, 2. But again, no. Jeff Fortune still in the game here. Billy White Moon rallying the fans here in Nashville. And he is having himself a pretty good time right about now. Jeff Fortune tags in Chris Wlde. Billy White Moon rounded up, front cradle by Chris, slammed into the turnbuckle and pitched out towards center ring. Jim Dandy tags him with a cheap shot. Chris with a stomp to the shoulder, and another set of stomps to the chest of Billy White Moon. Chris Wlde getting ready to go air here. Off the top, misses with the leg drop. White Moon getting out of the way just in time. Billy White Moon with a right to Chris Wlde into a sleeper hold, the Indian sleeper. This could be it right here. Chris Wlde struggling to find his way out of the hold, and he sure as hell does. Wow, that was amazing. White Moon back up on his feet, running spear. Takes down Chris Wlde, and here's another pin attempt. 1. Jeff Fortune immediately breaking up the pin. White Moon debates whether to go after Jeff, changes his mind. Goes after Chris Wlde on it. Whoa, did you see that? What a kick. A rope-assisted beauty right there from Billy White Moon. Chris Wlde counters with a kick. A hard right takes White Moon down to the mat. And in comes Jeff Fortune again. This match about 3/4 of the way through and still no signs of a winner. Billy White Moon with a hold on Jeff Fortune. Oh, a double ear clap. Jeff Fortune countering with elbows to the head of White Moon. A jab to the midsection. Jeff gathers him up into a sidewalk slam. Billy White Moon in trouble here as Jeff goes for another pin. 1, 2. Another near fall with less than 5 minutes to go. Another stomp to the shoulder of Billy White Moon from Jeff Fortune as he tags in Chris Wlde again, and the momentum has finally shifted over towards Wild Fortune here. Chris Wlde moves in on White Moon in the corner. Whoa, hard right. White Moon in a seated position. Chris gets him by the ankles, alley-oops him out of the corner. Chris biting the hand of Billy White Moon. Desperation maneuver there. 1, 2. And yet another near fall. And time is definitely running out. Chris on the middle rope drops the leg across the throat of Billy White Moon. And wisely going in for another pin attempt. 1. Wow, Jim Dandy Deacons breaking that one up abruptly. Chris all the way up on the top again. He's going to go air one more time. Misses with the elbow drop. Billy White Moon getting out of the way just in time. White Moon with a boot to the face of Chris Wlde as he turns it over to Jim Dandy Deacons. Deacons charges, running boot, catches Chris, but just slightly. Chris whips Deacons to the ropes, makes the duck under, makes the leapfrog. Here comes Jim Dandy. Chris winds up the arm. Jim Dandy counters with a shot, a kick to the midsection, and a set of elbows to the dome. Oh, down goes Chris. Here's another pin. No good. Jeff Fortune immediately breaking that one up. Oh, look at this Jim Dandy Deacons. A little bit of line dancing. Chris Wlde whipped back into the Best of the West corner, counters with an elbow, finds his way out, gets a hold of Jim Dandy, counter whips him to his team's corner. Here comes Chris Wlde. Another hard shot across the chest of Jim Dandy Deacons. Another grab of the ankles and another alley-oop out of the corner, this time to Jim Dandy. Chris Wlde biting his hand as well. How about this? Chris Wlde covers. 1, 2. And yet another near fall in this frenetically paced matchup. Chris Wlde locks up Jim Dandy, whips him to the Wild Fortune corner, takes himself up to the middle rope and starts raining right hands on the head of Jim Dandy Deakins. And Deakins looks like he's not going to be able to find his way out of this. A set of hard shots right to the skull, and down goes Jim Dandy Deakins. A quick counter from Jim Dandy. How about this right here? Back on his feet, gets a hold of Chris Wlde, whips him back into the Best of the West corner. And with less than 2 minutes to go, something's got to give. Right hands to the head from Jim Dandy Deakins. In retaliation, Chris Wlde shoves his way out of the corner. Gets a hold on Jim Dandy, tags him with a measured right, takes him down to the canvas. Less than a minute and a half to go here, Matt. Jeff Fortune comes in on the tag. Jim Dandy rolls out of the way, delivers a clothesline to Jeff. Jeff makes his way to a standing position against the ropes. Deakins opting to leave and turn it over to Billy Whitemoon with less than a minute to go. We may see a time limit draw here, and we may have to do this match all over again. Hard shot to the midsection to Jeff Fortune from Whitemoon. Whitemoon with a clothesline that sends Jeff Fortune spinning. Whitemoon gathers Jeff up again, whips him into the Wild Fortune corner. Here comes Jim Dandy Deakins one more time, just about a half a minute to go. And a beautiful tandem move right there, followed up with a senton from Jim Dandy. Here's another cover, but Chris Wlde right there to save his partner. Jim Dandy Deakins with less than 30 seconds remaining. What is going to happen here? Deakins all the way on the top. He goes air elbow across the chest of Chris Wlde. He covers and hooks the leg. 1, 2, 3. I don't believe it. With less than 10 seconds to go, Best of the West wins.
Here's the time, 19 minutes and 50 seconds. And your winners, Best of
Well,
the
this
West.
has got to be the pot boiler of the evening. Best of the West picking up the win over Wild Fortune with just 10 seconds to go. Absolutely amazing. What a conclusion to the first round of this TV tag tournament. Ladies and gentlemen, when we return, our main event, which will feature Rhonda Singh and Timeless Tony Storm in just a moment.